I stood there in a simple black dress, microphone in hand, eyes locked on the aisle where my ex-boyfriend, the billionaire, was about to marry another woman. He looked right at me and didn't even flinch. To him, I was just the hired singer, a nobody. But the moment I opened my mouth, the secret I'd been hiding for 3 years finally came out, right there, in front of everyone, on his wedding day. And within minutes, his picture-perfect ceremony turned into absolute chaos. Before I tell you how one song shattered a multi-million-dollar wedding and changed 3 lives forever, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss how this story ends. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My name's Maya, and back then, I really believed in fairy tales. You know the type. Girls broke, guys rich, they fall in love, and somehow, love fixes everything. I was 25, pulling back-to-back shifts at a tiny coffee shop downtown. My hands were covered in steam burns, and my dreams were way bigger than my bank account. Every morning at exactly 7:15, like clockwork, he'd walk in. Tall, sharp suit, but not the loud kind of rich. He had that quiet, confident look. From day one, he stood out. No phone glued to his hand. No eye rolls when the line moved slow. No complaints when I messed up the phone. Most people barely saw me. They just wanted caffeine, not conversation. But him? He looked right at me. Always. Said please and thank you like he actually meant it. And when he asked how my day was, he didn't just ask, he waited for an answer. I remember thinking, he's definitely not from around here. Nobody in this city treats service workers like that, unless they haven't always had money. And that's when I should have known. This wasn't going to be just another regular customer. Then one Tuesday morning, everything changed. He was fumbling with his wallet, and a business card fell out. I bent down to pick it up, and when I read the name, my heart almost stopped. Logan Reed, CEO of Reed Industries. I'd seen his face on magazine covers at the grocery store checkout. This wasn't just some nice guy in an expensive suit. This was a billionaire, and he'd been coming to my little coffee shop every day for 3 months, treating me like I mattered. When he asked me out that same day, I thought it was a joke. But the way he said it, nervous and hopeful, like he was scared I might say no, was when I knew he was serious. Our first date was at this tiny Italian place 6 blocks from the coffee shop. Nothing fancy, nothing that would make me feel out of place. He picked it on purpose. I realized later he wanted me to be comfortable, wanted to see the real me without all the pressure of his world weighing down on us. I wore my only nice dress, the black one I saved for job interviews, and spent 2 hours doing my makeup. But when I saw him waiting outside the restaurant, looking just as nervous as I felt, all that anxiety melted away. We talked for 4 hours straight about books, dreams, and how the city looked different at night. He told me about growing up with money but feeling empty inside, and I told him about growing up with love but struggling to pay rent. By the end of the night, it felt like I'd known him forever. The flowers started the next morning, fresh white roses on the counter when I opened the shop, with a note that just said, "Thank you for last night." Then it was every morning, roses, tulips, whatever was in season. My coworkers teased me relentlessly, but I didn't care. No one had ever done anything like that for me before. These weren't expensive arrangements from some fancy florist. They were simple, beautiful, and they made my whole day brighter. Our evening walks became a ritual. After I closed the shop, he'd pick me up, and we'd wander through the city for hours, discovering little parks tucked between buildings, art galleries that stayed open late. We'd sit on benches and talk about everything and nothing. He told me about the pressure of running a company he'd inherited and how lonely it was at the top. I told him about my music, how I sang at open mic nights and dreamed of recording an album someday. Under those street lights, sharing secrets and stolen kisses, we weren't a billionaire and a barista. We were just 2 people falling in love. The weekend getaways to his lake house felt like stepping into another world. No phones, no meetings, no reminders of the gap between us. Just Logan and me, cooking breakfast together, taking the boat out on the water, falling asleep in each other's arms while the sun set over the lake. For the first time in my life, I understood what people meant when they talked about finding their person. Paris was where everything became real. He surprised me with the trip for my 26th birthday, and I cried when he handed me the plane tickets. I'd never been anywhere outside the state, let alone Europe. The whole flight, I kept pinching myself, sure I'd wake up back in my studio apartment with the leaky faucet and noisy neighbors. But it was real. The city of light, with its cobblestone streets and cafe culture, felt like it was made for us. On our second night there, we were walking along the Seine after dinner when it started to rain. Instead of running for cover, Logan pulled me close and started dancing right there on the bridge. No music, except the sound of rain on the water and the distant hum of the city. That's when he said it. "I love you, Maya." 3 words that changed everything. I said it back without hesitation because I'd been feeling it for weeks, but was too scared to be the first one to say it. We danced in that rain until we were soaked through, laughing and kissing like teenagers. Coming home from Paris, everything shifted into a different gear. Suddenly, I was part of his life in ways I never expected. Sunday mornings became sacred to us. We'd sleep in, make pancakes from scratch, read the paper in bed while the coffee got cold. He'd play with my hair while I sang softly, working out melodies for new songs. Those quiet moments felt more intimate than anything I'd ever experienced. It was in those Sunday morning silences that I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with this man. But loving Logan meant entering his world, and his world was complicated. The charity galas, the business dinners, the social events where everyone knew his net worth, but not his middle name. I felt like an imposter in borrowed dresses and rented jewelry. But Logan never left my side. He'd introduce me proudly, his hand always on my back or holding mine, as if he was anchoring me to him in those unfamiliar waters. When people asked what I did, and I said I worked in a coffee shop, he'd add that I was also a talented singer and songwriter. He made me feel like I belonged, even when everything around us suggested I didn't. The ring shopping started casually. We'd walk past jewelry stores, and he'd stop to look at the displays. "What do you think of that one?" he'd ask, pointing to different styles. I thought it was just curiosity until he started taking notes on his phone about what I liked. The future we talked about wasn't hypothetical anymore. We looked at apartments together, bigger places where we could both fit comfortably. He talked about me meeting his parents, about traveling the world together, about the life we were going to build. I'd never been so happy, so sure of anything in my entire life. I thought fairy tales were real because I was living in one. The first crack appeared when Logan's mother came to town. Vivian Reed was everything I'd imagined and feared. Old money elegance with ice-cold eyes that looked right through me. She insisted on meeting me at the country club, a place where I felt like every step I took on those marble floors was a mistake. Logan tried to prepare me, said she was just protective, but nothing could have prepared me for the way she dissected every word I said. "So you work in hospitality?" she said, like the word tasted bitter in her mouth. When I mentioned my music, she smiled that thin smile rich women perfect over decades of looking down on people. How charming. Logan has always had a soft spot for charity cases. The words hit like a slap. But what hurt more was watching Logan just sit there, not defending me the way he always had before. That night started a pattern. Suddenly, there were rules I didn't know about. The right fork to use, the right way to hold a wine glass, the right people to know. Logan hired an etiquette coach without asking me first, presenting it like a gift. "Just to help you feel more comfortable," he said, but comfortable was the last thing I felt. I was being molded into someone else, someone worthy of his world. The prenup conversation happened over breakfast on a Tuesday. He slid the papers across the table like it was nothing, explaining it was just business, just protection for both of us. But reading those terms felt like reading a list of all the ways he didn't trust me, all the ways our love had a price tag. I signed it anyway because I loved him. But something fundamental shifted between us that morning. Chloe entered our lives like a hurricane wrapped in designer clothes. She was everything I wasn't, blonde, connected, born into the same world Logan came from. She spoke his language of board meetings and stock options, laughed at inside jokes I didn't understand, and worst of all, Logan lit up around her in ways that made my stomach drop. "She's just a business associate," he'd say when I asked about their late-night meetings, their weekend conferences that always seemed to happen in the most romantic locations. "You're being paranoid, Maya." But paranoia is just pattern recognition, and the patterns were impossible to ignore. The way he'd silence his phone when I walked into the room, the way he'd shower immediately after those business dinners, the way he stopped looking me in the eye when he said he loved me. The confirmation came on a Thursday night when I went to surprise him at his office with dinner. I had my key, walked right in, and found them on his desk, not just kissing, completely wrapped up in each other like they'd done this 100 times before. Chloe saw me first, her eyes going wide with something that looked almost like relief. Logan turned around, and for a split second, I saw something on his face I'd never seen before. Not guilt, but annoyance, like I was interrupting something important. "Maya, this isn't what it looks like," he started, but we all knew it was exactly what it looked like. Chloe was already straightening her skirt, fixing her hair, with the confidence of a woman who knew she'd won. I didn't scream or cry or throw things like I'd imagined I would in that moment. I just stood there, feeling something inside me break so quietly it barely made a sound. The breakup was clinical, businesslike. Logan sat me down the next day and explained it like a merger gone wrong. We wanted different things, came from different worlds. It was nobody's fault, but it wasn't working. He'd already had his assistant find me a new apartment, paid the first year's rent, and set up a bank account with enough money to get me started somewhere else. Everything wrapped up neat and tidy, like our 2 years together were just a contract that had expired. I moved out that weekend, boxing up the life we'd built together into cardboard containers. The flowers he'd given me had dried out, hanging upside down in my closet like preserved memories. I kept them anyway, along with the ticket stubs from Paris and the photo of us dancing in the rain. Sometimes love leaves evidence behind. 2 weeks later, I knew something was wrong with my body. The nausea that wouldn't go away, the exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix, the way my clothes felt different. The pregnancy test felt heavy in my hands as I watched those 2 pink lines appear, clear as day. I was carrying Logan's baby, and he was already gone. I called him 3 times before he answered. When I told him, the silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then he said the words that killed whatever was left of my heart. "How much do you need to take care of it?" Like our child was a problem to be solved with money, like the person growing inside me was just another business expense. "I'm keeping the baby," I told him. And he laughed, actually laughed. "Maya, be realistic. You can barely take care of yourself." The man who once danced with me in the rain, who whispered promises in the dark, was gone. In his place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who could reduce our child to a financial transaction. That was the last time we spoke for 3 years. I moved across the country, changed my name, started over with nothing but the life growing inside me. I never told him when Aria was born, never sent photos of her first steps or first words. He'd made his choice clear. We were nothing to him, just another problem he'd paid to go away. Being a single mother changes you in ways you never expect. Aria became my world, this perfect little person with Logan's eyes and my stubborn streak. I worked nights, singing at restaurants and weddings, anything that paid enough to keep us fed and housed. My dreams of recording an album got smaller, more practical. Now I just wanted to give my daughter a stable life, something I'd never really had growing up. When my booking agent called about a wedding gig that paid more than I made in 3 months, I didn't ask questions. High-end client, full orchestra backing, black tie event at the most expensive venue in the city, the kind of job that could cover Aria's daycare for the rest of the year and maybe even let us move to a place with 2 bedrooms. I said yes before hearing any details. The contract came by email the next morning, and my blood turned to ice when I saw the names. Mr. Logan Reed and Ms. Chloe Hart, requesting classical ceremony music and contemporary reception entertainment. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped my phone. After 3 years of building a new life, of healing from what he'd done to us, fate was throwing me right back into his world. I should have declined. I should have told my agent there was a conflict of interest. But looking at Arya playing on the floor, wearing clothes from the thrift store and shoes that were getting too small, I couldn't afford to be proud. This job would change everything for us. And maybe, just maybe, it was time Logan Reed learned exactly what his choices had cost him. The venue was everything I expected: marble columns, crystal chandeliers, flowers that cost more than my rent. I arrived early for soundcheck, hoping to avoid seeing anyone I knew. The other musicians were professional, focused on their music stands and not on the small-time singer they'd hired for the evening entertainment. I was just another vendor to them, invisible in the way service people always are at events like this. Backstage, I tried to calm my nerves by running through my set list: safe songs, wedding classics, nothing that would draw attention to myself. The plan was simple: sing, get paid, go home to Arya. But plans have a way of falling apart when your heart gets involved. That's when he appeared in the doorway, 3 years older, still handsome, but wearing his success like armor now. Logan Reed, groom of the hour, looking exactly like the man who'd broken my heart and abandoned his child. For a moment, neither of us moved. The recognition hit his face like a physical blow. "Maya, what are you doing here?" His voice carried that same authority it always had, but there was something underneath it now: uncertainty, maybe even fear. I straightened my shoulders and looked him right in the eye the way I'd learned to do when people tried to make me feel small. "I'm the evening entertainment," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Congratulations on your wedding." The words tasted like metal in my mouth, but I got them out. He stepped closer, and I caught his cologne, the same one he'd worn when we were together. Some memories live in your senses, waiting to ambush you when you least expect it. "Maya, I didn't know you were still in the city." He was fumbling, this man who never fumbled, who ran billion-dollar meetings without breaking a sweat. You look good." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here we were, making small talk at his wedding to another woman, pretending we were strangers who just met. That's when my purse fell, spilling its contents across the marble floor. And there it was, Arya's school photo, the one I carried everywhere. Logan's eyes locked on it, his face going white as he recognized his own features. Walking onto that stage felt like walking to my execution. The audience was everything I remembered from Logan's world: old money families, business associates, people who measured worth in stock portfolios and country club memberships. Chloe sat in the front row, radiant in her designer wedding dress, completely unaware that her perfect day was about to implode. I introduced myself as the evening's entertainment, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. Logan was standing near the back, still staring at me with that shocked expression, probably wondering if I'd really brought his daughter's photo or if he'd imagined it. The orchestra started the opening notes of what was supposed to be a safe cover song, something forgettable and appropriate. But when I opened my mouth, different words came out: the song Logan and I had danced to in Paris, the one he'd hummed while cooking breakfast on those perfect Sunday mornings. The melody that had become ours during those 2 years when I thought we were building forever together. The audience shifted uncomfortably, sensing something had changed, but not understanding what. "This next song," I said into the microphone, my voice stronger now, "is dedicated to the groom and to the daughter he's never met." The words hung in the air like smoke, and I watched the realization spread across faces in the crowd. Chloe's smile faltered, her hand going to her throat. I sang about love and lies, about promises broken and children abandoned, about a man who had everything but chose nothing. With each verse, the truth spilled out: how Logan had thrown money at me to disappear, how he'd never asked about the baby, how he'd built his new life on the grave of our old one. The music swelled behind me, the orchestra following my lead. Even as chaos erupted in the audience, people were standing now, whispers turning to shouts. Chloe was on her feet, her face twisted with horror and rage. But I kept singing, kept telling our story, because some truths are too big to stay buried forever. When I finally let the last note fade, the silence was deafening. The aftermath was everything you'd expect. Security moving toward the stage, guests on their phones, Chloe screaming at Logan while her perfect wedding crumbled around her. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone and showed the crowd the photos I'd never sent him. Aria's first breath, her first steps, her first day of school. 3 years of moments he'd missed because he chose money over family. Her name is Aria, I said into the microphone before security could cut the sound. She's 3 years old, loves butterflies, and asks why other kids have daddies, but she doesn't. I've been telling her that some people aren't ready to be parents, but maybe it's time she knew the truth about her father. Logan pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of shock and something that might have been regret. Chloe was already gone, her wedding dress trailing behind her as she fled the disaster her perfect day had become. The venue emptied quickly, leaving just us and the echoes of what I'd done. "Is she really mine?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I showed him the birth certificate, the DNA results I'd gotten just in case this day ever came. Watching him process the reality of his daughter's existence felt like watching someone wake up from a 3-year coma. "I want to meet her," he said. And for the first time since I'd walked onto that stage, I felt uncertain. Aria was my whole world, and letting him into it felt dangerous. But she deserved to know her father, even if he'd proven himself unworthy of the title. On my terms, I told him slowly, carefully. "And if you hurt her the way you hurt me, it'll be the last mistake you ever make." He nodded, this man who used to run boardrooms, now taking orders from the woman he'd tried to erase. Standing there in my black dress, surrounded by the ruins of his wedding, I realized something had shifted inside me. I wasn't the broken girl who'd left town 3 years ago. I was Aria's mother, and that had made me stronger than Logan Reed could ever understand. The fairy tale was over, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Real life, messy and complicated as it was, had given me something better than any fantasy ever could. It had given me my daughter and the strength to fight for her. That was worth more than all his billions combined. And that's how one song turned everything upside down. Logan didn't get his picture-perfect wedding, but he got something far more real, the truth about the daughter he tried to forget. As for me, I realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is speak up, even when your voice shakes, even when it hurts. If this story hit you like it hit me living it, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stick around for more real-life stories that'll stay with you long after they end. And remember this, sometimes the most powerful revenge is living your truth out loud. So now I have to ask, if you were in Maya's shoes, what would you have done? Drop it in the comments below. I'm listening.